All right, so choosing our buyer. Folks, you're not going to be having to accept just anyone for these houses. I don't want to beat that horse too badly, but you're going to have a choice. And because you have a choice, because you're in demand, you can really establish expectations without fear of consequences of having to go back and market for more people and that kind of a thing. You could easily talk yourself right out of an acquisition because there's less people willing to offer terms or great prices than there are people who are willing to do that. So the role is kind of reversed when we're going to sellers, but when we are the seller, we can make not just clear expectations, but actual demand, and you'll watch people comply if handle it correctly. You don't have to be super articulate, you just have to be clear. On the acquisition side, your ability to articulate the alternatives for the seller, not as much. Just being clear is really important with the buyer and in your selection so you can hear what they have to say about things. So we've gone through a lot, right? We've looked at how we market to them, we've looked at the responses we get from them, we've had conversations, and now we're going to make a selection. So this is the preferred protocol. Most of the time, I'm not even going to meet the buyer in person. I guess if it's local, I might want to meet them. Nowadays, we can do this stuff over Zoom, Google Meet, whatever. But for the most part, unless I'm utterly and totally confident, I want to see some level of proof of funds. What I like to do and what I suggest you do, because you're not going to have the feel for it right away, right? If you haven't done a lot of these. I've got a feel for it because I've talked to thousands of buyers, thousands of sellers. You get like a feel for things and who's BSing you and who isn't. You might not have that yet. So a good way to get that is to create some, hoops that people have to jump through. Create a little bit of friction in the environment to see who really wants the place and who's pulling your leg, so to speak. I'm not the slightest bit shy about telling somebody who wants to buy a $500,000 house or thereabouts with no bank financing and no ability to get bank financing, and I'm the bank committee. I have absolutely no qualms about saying, hey, look, before we put a lot of effort into this, we require everybody show us their proof of funds. So we're on a Zoom call here. Why don't you go ahead and log into your bank and just show me that you have the money? Otherwise, we're kind of wasting our time. Now, of course, they could go spend the money. It still could be some BS, but I get people to actually do that. Like, I want to see them do it live. I don't want to just see some proof of funds letter that somebody, doctored up on Fiverr or whatever. It's not going to work anyway. People will send you a screenshot sometimes. Just depends on how you want to handle it. I'll take a screenshot. Even begin signing anything until the money is at the lawyer's office, or, most of the time I'm not going to be using a title company to install buyers. But if you are, then because they're tenant buyers, right? They're tenants first and then they're buyers later. Use the title company on the back. But on the front, usually it's the lawyer who is holding the money, get them to sign off, and then they release the money to us. So I want to know that they have the money. Too many times they don't have the money and you just trusted them, right? Oh, I got my tax return coming, next week. And then the next thing you know, you've told two other people that they can't have the house and their tax return doesn't come in. Now you find yourself having to remarket the property. We don't want to be in that position. Before I'm sending them over to the attorney's office with the money, I will have already received a report back from the mortgage broker, by the way. Screen the tenant. They do provide basically the same services there. Here, I wrote mortgage broker in there, but the background check company that I recommended yesterday, Screen the Tenant, will give you a very, very good idea of what it's going to take to qualify from any bank, right? The banks all have the same standards because all the banks, not all of them, not 100% of them, but a very significant percentage of the banks sell those loans on the secondary market to investors, including the U.S. government who buys mortgage-backed securities and including foreign governments who buys American housing securities, mortgage bonds, right? And that's the way those things are packaged up and sold. And then, of course, the banks who don't resell them and keep them for their own portfolio, they just follow the same standards and guidelines for the most part. So it's very, very clear what it's going to take for someone to qualify, and it really is a commodity product. If you don't qualify at Citibank, you're probably not going to qualify at Chase. If you don't qualify at either of those two, you're probably not going to qualify at Wells Fargo. Okay, that's the way the world works here. So there's lots of services that can run them through a tool that's going to be accurate as to what it's going to take for somebody to get over the hump. And I like to know that ahead of time. Rarely had anybody tell me that it's impossible. And I've had people with foreclosures, bankruptcies, all kinds of, credit in the 400s. But with a couple of years, not even most of the time, but within 2 years, you can do a lot. I understand, oh, I had a foreclosure, I got to wait 7 years. Oh, I had a BK, I got to wait this much time. You'd be surprised at what can actually happen. So without getting into every single granular detail of that, just know that if you use professionals to VIP credit repair, the broke credit and the people actually do the things that they're supposed to do, they can get in a good position to qualify. Now, they are going to have to get their income fix that. You actually have to make the income and be able to prove that. So I want to know this stuff before I'm even in any kind of serious discussion with any buyer. Now, this is where we're going to get a little gritty. For me, I feel like I'm a good judge of character, but I've been so wrong about, and I'm not just talking about real estate, but there's often times where I'm like, oh, that guy's a dick, and then he turns out to be a nice guy, or that I thought that guy was cool, but he turned out to be a jerk. You got to be a little bit careful about your prejudices and how you feel about people. That's why I don't pay much attention to any of this celebrity stuff, or a lot of the stuff that's said on the news about people. I've never met any of these people. I don't know what kind of people they really are, and you're getting it third hand from people. Even if you trust them, you really gotta meet the person, and then you can still get the wool pulled over your eyes. So I've just sort of given up on the idea that I'm gonna go meet someone in person and totally trust my judgment. However, if you do go meet the person, it is gonna make you feel more comfortable with your choice. There's no question. You still might make a less than optimal decision, but you don't have to meet your buyer in person. You can meet them over Zoom. You can even not meet them. Sometimes I'm lazy enough to not even do the Zoom and just have a phone call. But when I talk to them, because remember, money talks, right? I almost don't care that much. If I have enough money, that's where their credibility comes from. That's where my trust generates from. They don't want to blow that money in a month, 2, 3 months, right? They actually want to give this the old college try to get the house. So I am super clear on the phone or by the video meeting of what the expectations are, which we'll get into. My goal is to be able to make a final determination if I want them to get the house, and then also to see if they're going to be able to manage, one, a higher upfront fee, because I'm going to try to talk that fee up because for my own protection, and a higher monthly payment also for my own protection. Those are my goals when I'm meeting with the buyer. Now, let's talk about how we do that, okay? People will say one thing and not realize that another thing is actually possible. And your job, if you're doing your job right, with a commitment to making as much money as possible and still providing what the people need, it doesn't change the price of the house for them. But your job is to get as much as you can, unless you're threading the needle like we've talked about, but pretty much it's to get as much as you can. And it's always going to be very competitive among buyers for these houses. And we use that competitive environment, that supply-demand imbalance, where we have the small supply of houses you can rent and have the option to buy during the term of the lease, have bad credit, not be able to get current bank financing, realtors are shunning you. There's not a lot of houses available for people like that, especially the ones in the good, clean neighborhoods, right? But I got one. The demand comes out of the woodwork for that. So because the demand is so high, I want to get what I can for it and secure my position with as much collateral as I can. Collateral being that they have a non-refundable option fee that gets applied to the price if they buy, but does not if they don't. So I'll let people know if I'm in a conversation with them, they're definitely a top candidate, even if they're not the top candidate. So I will let them know, look, you're a top candidate for this. You're not the only candidate. It is just a matter of really needing more down payment to lock up the deal. I think you're fine, folks. Everything else has come through, but I'm getting a little bit of heartburn about how little you have compared to what we usually get on a beautiful house like this. And there might be a way for me to help you be in a better position to be the number one candidate here. It's just a matter of how bad you want this property. So, hey, your background check, it came back fine. Was satisfied with your promise to do everything that you can to get your financing in place. Get the financing in place in the time that we've discussed so that you can close on this house and make it your very own. At the same time, I'm having a little bit of heartburn about the maximum amount of money you can put up front on this thing. For a beautiful home like this, it would be rare for us to take so little money. And I know you want this, and I'd like to be able to put you in it, but I can't say you're in the first position right now. So to lock this up for you, spouse, kids, Super Bowl parties, Thanksgivings, Christmases that can happen in this house, we got to dig a little bit deeper, and I might be able to help you with that. Is there something that you can do to come up with a little bit more money before I make a selection and we close on this thing in the next couple of days with you moving in, if that's what the time frame is, right? You'll be amazed at how people find a way to come up with more money. Or they say they can't, and then you hang up in a somber mood and they call you back 20 minutes later and they come up with a lot more money. Now, if they truly can't come up with any more money, is there any like item, something that you might have to increase it? Now, the other day I had a guy willing to, he had like a bunch of tools, but that's not going to really do as much depending on what the tools are. The one in that call, I've mentioned this before, the guy had a motorcycle. I decided to not take it because it was only going to add like, I don't know, a 250cc motorcycle. Probably not going to be worth more than $1,000, 1,500, something like that. So it just wasn't really worth it to deal with it. Didn't want to take the dude's motorcycle. So, but I'm not going to stop there, right? Because I legitimately do want to get more money on this house and make me feel a lot better. It's not changing their scenario, right? They're still getting the house, they're still getting the price, they're still getting the terms. It's just that they're going to now have to get a lower loan amount because they put more down. So I'm helping them actually. But yeah, they're not going to have that money sitting in a bank account or whatever it may be. So the next thing is, okay, well, if you don't have it now, what if we accepted you, but we required that you come up with X amount of dollars, within 90 days from now? Is there something that, we can look to there? Another lump sum payment coming along the way? Do you have a tax return coming in? Is there a settlement coming in? Something along those lines. Is there anything that we can do to get this up? I mean, I'm trying to get you in here, but I got other people who maybe they don't have the same story that you have. You guys seem like really fine folks. I really would like to help you out, but I also have to make a decision from a business standpoint. And if someone's going to put a lot more money into this up front, I'm much more confident they're going to qualify for the loan in the end than you. So I'm just trying to find ways. So we'll hit them with that.